Queens County is the most diverse county in the nation, as we've heard before. I believe you covered in workshop one, partially in workshop two, and we see it each day, whether that's on the train, whether that's in our community libraries. We see it all the time. But this also presents not only some challenges that we've discussed, in this workshop and in previous discussions, but they also apply for opportunities. And we're able to bring in new concepts and new services to not only diverse groups of people, but to very divergent groups of people, linguistically, socially, economically, educationally. All of these factors come in when we want to serve the public. And this is not saying that now we have to remove our own services and change all of our services to specifically cater towards one unique population. But now we must consider not only who comes into our doors, but those who do not come in, and where we're going to support them. In what areas do they need support? And one of these areas specifically is job placement, workforce development, educational services. This is something that we want to consider when we are connecting our customers to resources. Additionally, the Bangladeshi population, just for this example, has higher rates of having children. So there might be a higher need for family literacy. There also may be a higher need for support programs for parents that live in the United States, or families that might be separated still to come to the United States. Now, the library doesn't have to support all of these things within our own services, but this is something that we really need to consider as we are now bridging information and services to our customers. And when we think about this, and when we consider all of the challenges and the opportunities that come, we also want to look at what the library has historically done for these populations, and then look at what the library can do or modify in order to meet the needs of these groups. Now, I pointed out the Bangladeshi population in this presentation because it is the fastest growing in New York City. Compared to all the other populations where their rates have kind of slowed down a little bit in the last couple of years, the Bengali population, or the Bangladeshi more specifically, that population has increased at a much higher rate than we've seen in a long time. Not only do they not represent traditional forms in the United States, traditional immigrant groups in the United States, they also represent different cultural backgrounds, religious backgrounds, different contexts and perceptions to what family looks like and how we interact with each other and what services are. And we also want to consider, how do we, as staff members, continue to bridge information together to our customers. So we want to bring in several considerations. The characteristics with workforce participation and median income guides us to learn the indirect needs of our customers. Many times our customers come to us with questions such as, I need help finding educational opportunities, I need help with my child needs English classes, or I need English classes. But there are many factors that are on the background that may need to be addressed. And these include things such as social services and benefits that might be available to them. This might include workforce development, and not just job searching, but actual support as, do I need a resume and cover letter, or how do I conduct an interview, or immigration statuses. Do we understand how to bring in lawyers, like we've done in some of our programs so far, to help customers get the best information and the most relevant and current information possible. Additionally, We want to think about all of these hidden needs that we have not brought to the surface. And as you go through workshops 2 and 3, and as you put together these community profiles or the immigration or immigrant profiles, you'll be able to start seeing some things that might surprise you or shock you, or things that might affirm what you've seen in the community, but not actually had to practice fully. And as we apply this to library services, I can name a few things and I can name a few programs, but really, I want to leave that up to you all as the participants and the ones on the front line and the active helpers and the active leaders in the community to really show and demonstrate the competency of, yes, we have new groups, we have diverse groups, we have divergent groups coming in, and now these needs need to be met by us in some way or connecting you to where these needs can be met. Additionally, demographics are laying generally just a foundation for information. Once again, this doesn't mean that we have to completely change around our system and saying that we're going to remove all of our programming and start fresh or start anew. But what this does say is that we are willing now to reanalyze and reassess the services that we have and the things that we're doing in order to ensure that all of our customers are having their needs met. So these demographics are just providing informational foundations. And with these statistics, this helps us to get more funding for grants. This helps us to put on new and different programming. This helps us to also pinpoint the needs of our communities well enough to partner with different organizations that have the services that we don't offer here at the library. The library in general can be a one-stop shop, and we've grown to become even more of a one-stop shop over the last years, and that's been an awesome and exciting venture for all of our programs. But there are still some things that the library does not do, or in some things we cannot do due to funding, due to other reasons. And so this information is the opportunity for us to really apply new concepts. This is an opportunity for collaboration. This is an opportunity for really motivating the community around us. Now that we can see who's around us, we can also bring them into our doors. And with this, we want to make sure that we are representative, or we're trying to represent and advocate for those communities who are either not seen, or those communities who are very, very seen and still have needs that aren't met. The demographics also allow us to be able to find out what communities are starting to wane in certain areas. As we know, neighborhoods change over time. In New York City, approximately every 10 to 15 years, the makeup of a community changes a little bit or enough to make a difference in what services need to be provided. In our communities, especially in South Jamaica, we've seen larger influxes of the Bangladeshi population, but even larger influxes of populations that didn't historically exist there. We also look at places like Elmhurst, which their demographics have changed significantly over the last 2 decades. And then the dominant populations in these areas have also shifted. And as more and more immigrants continue to come into the US, and particularly through New York City and the other three immigrant gateways, many of these places are just a stepping stone or just an entry point for these foreign born residents. And after they become a little bit established in the United States and they begin preparing and get their lives set up, many of them are now moving to other parts of the country that historically have not had large numbers of immigrants. And this you will really review a lot in workshop 2 and 3. And because they're coming through New York City, and a lot of them are settling in Queens, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, we're seeing that the library is becoming even more of a key place to not only introduce new citizens and introduce new residents into U.S. society, and helping them to understand some of the cultural norms and some of the ways to navigate our systems, but we're also preparing them to integrate into other parts of the country. And so we are equipping them with the information and the guidelines and the tools and the resources necessary in order for them to be successful, not only in New York City, but also be successful in other regions. When you look at certain maps, and I'm going to show you one place that we can find it, you're going to look at different pieces and different maps that are providing these new immigrant gateways or these new immigrant settlement points. And a lot of them you'll see are out in the Midwest and in the Southeast. Once again, regions that have not historically had large numbers of immigrants. And when we think about all of the people who live in our communities and we think about the population that comes into our libraries, this is a key point to starting to engage more outreach and to bring more outreach into our communities. There are limitations sometimes to what we can do. Those can be cultural barriers, those can be linguistic barriers, and we addressed some of those ideas and barriers in the last webinar. However, this is something that we really want to begin considering as we move into the next couple of years. What do we want to do in the library system? How do we want to begin integrating newer populations and historical populations as they begin to shift out of the city or shift into different neighborhoods, or many of their children are integrated into U.S. culture, U.S. society, to where they're not the most representative group? Where do we begin to support these new families, these new workers, these new students? And it's really finding out what statistical evidence we have for those challenges. We see that there are certain communities that are heavily impoverished. We see that there are certain communities that may not have resources that are much needed. We might not see many people coming into the library that really do need to come in. This means there might be online resources that we need to develop. There might be increases in the need to meet not only the needs of the digital age and the workforce age, but also simple things such as, what are the books that I need to understand or learn this math in this way? We also need to understand what are the educational needs of our communities across the board, not only for the children, but also for the adults. And the best way to think about this is, how can your library use this information to improve services for our immigrants? And when we put this into consideration and put this into perspective, this is not just what my own community library can do, but things that we consider as a system, things that we look at on an individual level. What can I do as an individual to be able to support my customers?